No price talk and no Lambos. This is not another crypto podcast. Welcome to Ignition. I'm your host, Jillian, and each week we will be looking at the problems solved by blockchain. I'll be going deep with the people building the apps and communities which are changing the world around us. Hello and welcome to Ignition, which is EOS Dublin's podcast presented by me, Jillian Gotzel. Now, each week we like to talk to people, sometimes in the EOS community and sometimes not. So today we have somebody who is not inside the EOS community, and we have Steve Good, who is the broadcaster and founder of coinchat.net. Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Good morning, Jillian. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm excellent. Now, have I given you your correct title? I'm sure you got some other titles as well as founder.
Well, I'm the host of the Coin Chat, which is a YouTube and Spotify show that has about 30,000 subscribers and listeners. And of course, that's just one of several things I do in crypto. But as they say, I'm all in when it comes to crypto.
That is very true. I was speaking with your partner in crime, Yuri, last week, and he was saying you are all in. But tell me just a little bit about who you were before you met crypto.
I was working in Fintech, mostly in sales and in management consulting. I didn't spend a lot of time doing anything outside of that because, with these big clients like, big banks, you spend a lot of time really engaged with them, helping them solve real world problems in the banking space. So a lot of it was account management. A lot of it was on site with clients, working through how to get things implemented. And being Fintech, it was all about trading. It was all about back-end reconciliation or settlement systems, accounting systems. It was just a whole array of things. And I'd lived in that space for about 20 years and then realized, what am I doing in this space? There's something more interesting outside that I might want to dig into. And I sort of fell into crypto and then kept going.
Wow. Well, and how did you, your Fintech background, trading, so how did you get into vlogging and podcasting? Where did that come from? Where did the inner broadcaster come from?
It's interesting because I actually was a performer when I was younger. I had always been in high school musicals. I had done a lot of vocal training. I trained with a former Broadway musician in vocal. I had done voiceover training in Los Angeles. And it was always something I enjoyed, but I never really saw that there was a future for it for me because, we always kind of leave our youth behind at some point and get serious about careers. But with cryptocurrency and the vastness of information that's flowing and the difficulty for people to get it, I realized that might be an opportunity to just create a channel and help educate people and start raising awareness about what's happening in the space. And it kind of just became a life of its own. Wow.
And you're also an author now. All these new things that you're doing. Do you know what's really exciting before I ask you about your book?
I'm a minor too.
Yeah, you're a minor. Oh my God. A minor and an author. But what I love, oftentimes when you ask a young person, what do you want to be? And they go, I want to be a pilot. I want to be an astronaut. And they kind of grow up and those things don't exist anymore. But what I love about you is you're going back to almost like your childhood dreams, being mining and writing and presenting. These are all exciting things that you want to do as a young person. And
there's something to be said about that. That's true because I did leave behind my musical career and my time spent training and studying music and art and theater, mostly because it's very difficult to break into that space. And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe it's just not for me. It's not for a lot of people. And I didn't want to be a starving actor, working at a restaurant. So I decided I'll put my brain and my capability and skills to use elsewhere. But you're right. Things sort of changed. There was an opportunity. And I said, you know what? I'll podcast. I'll run my own mining equipment and mine and set up my own mine. And I've done that. And then Yuri, my co-host, and I decided, you know what? There's so much great content here, but what's missing in the market is a book that explains how to get started for my grandma or your aunt or your brother who knows nothing about crypto. And we decided, let's write a book that makes it so easy that anybody could read it and understand what's going on, because that's where the biggest problem is. So we're in the final throes of editing this book and getting it out hopefully in the next couple of months, because it's been a year in the making, which books take a long time because there's a lot of editing and a lot of design work that goes on. But yeah, we've done it.
Wow! I can't wait to see it. And you haven't got a title. Oh, you have a working title. I love your working title.
We have a working title, which is something like "Don't Get Left Behind."
Yeah, I like that. That's very, very powerful, and it'll make people want to go and buy the book and read the book. Well, I think it'll be excellent. I'm looking forward to that. And by the way, when you're both writing, do you have the same writing style, or do you differ, or do you fight much?
So what we had to do was it was an interesting exercise in how do you merge voices.
Mm-hmm.
What we did was we actually hired a ghostwriter to help us at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And what we did was we took about 10 of our podcast episodes that were effectively the most important episodes that we'd created at the beginning, which laid out the foundations for the book. And we gave those episodes to our writer to have her help us merge the voices into one.
Okay, because I imagine it would be difficult otherwise.
It was difficult, and that's why we couldn't separate ourselves from our content. So when she wrote it, we were reading this book like it was our voice. It was the most bizarre thing ever because I have my tone and Yuri has his, and it is literally a merged tone. It was so weird, but it works. And we're happy that we have this merged tone. And once we got the book in a first form, we took it over. We've been editing it for the last couple months and debating different content. And oh my God, we forgot to put this in the book. How did we miss that? Oh my God. There's just always little things you forget about. So we've been adding them in as we go and
taking some out maybe.
Yeah, but we're down to the last kind of major edit that we're doing now. And then it's going through a process that you have to go through with publishers and with, editing, another level of editing and legal checks and all that kind of stuff, because you don't want to offend or, make mention of something you shouldn't or have, references missing. So that's a legal process we have to go through and an editing process that has to be done. But it's exciting.
Oh, surely. I look forward to reading it. So tell me, when you first heard about, question, did you first hear about blockchain, or did you first hear about like cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin? What was your introduction to this whole sector?
My introduction to this sector goes all the way back to 2010.
Wow.
It's an interesting story. I was working with a marketing guru in London, super smart guy, mad as a hatter, crazy and hilarious. And he was my coach for a period of time when I was launching a business in London, a traditional bricks and mortar IT consulting financial services company. Mm-hmm. And when I was launching the company and spending time with him, he came to my office to visit one day and he says, I've got this amazing catalog. You guys have got to check this out. And we're like, okay, what's this catalog? And he said, you can buy or sell anything with Bitcoin. And we looked at him and said, Barnaby, this has just gone too far. What is this? He said, well, you can buy anything with this coin or anything with that coin, and you could sell anything. And there was a whole catalog filled with people that were just trying to do things all around the globe. I have no idea where he got the print copy of this book. And my first question was, well, how do you get the Bitcoin in the first place? And he said, well, you earn it by doing other services. And I said, well, but I couldn't get my head around it. And I literally parked it for 3 years. Then I went to an event in Silicon Valley 3 years later. And it was an event called Finding the Future. And it was all about getting people to think about not where we are today, but rather looking for billion-dollar ideas. Where could we be in the future? What kinds of things could we look at or do that might take us to the future? So we were looking at virtual reality. We were looking at how NASA flies Black Hawk helicopters, how they simulate them flying to simulate experiences for war games. We talked about graphene. And then we talked about something else, and it wasn't cryptocurrency, it was ICOs. And the reason we talked about ICOs was the whole idea of being able to create unique and different currencies. And the idea that a company could create its own currency tied to its own business. And Bitcoin was part of that discussion, but it was Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, but really about ICO. And at the time, I was just so busy with my traditional, sales and management consulting work that I came out of that event thinking, I really need to go and look at this stuff. I really need to spend time looking at it. And I finally sat down and started looking at it toward the back end of 2016. And then I quit my job. No kidding.
That was it. Wow.
Yeah, I just said to my wife that we're going to go do this. And she's like, oh, are you sure? And I said, yeah. I mean, at the time, at the time, Ether was $9.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So even with the crypto winter, you're very happy with your decision to jump all in.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's still been an incredibly hard winter because my income dried up too, like everyone else's. And, you don't want to sell crypto when you're down. You want to sell it when you're up. So, it's not been easy.
But it's nice that you were there early, I suppose.
I was there early, and it means that I was able to get a bit of crypto early and just sit on that crypto early. But I didn't buy as much as I should have done because who knew it would go up from 9 to 80 to $1,200 for Ether. I mean, no one thought that was going to happen at the time. So, you know, you can always look back and say, I wish I'd bought more.
So tell me, you have this really great podcast that runs, and I've been featured. Thank you very much in it as well. But who is, apart from the good self, who is the most exciting person you've interviewed on your vlog, on your YouTube channel?
Well, I mean, there's a few people we've had on the show who've been really interesting people. I mean, John McAfee was a great person to talk to.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to get him on the show, but I did. And talking with him offline was far more interesting than the actual interview, because he opens up a lot and he talks about things, and you can have very interesting discussions and dialogue. And that's really cool. I really enjoyed that. Andrew Yang, who's a presidential candidate in the US right now.
Oh, yes,
For president. Yeah. Fascinating guy. I mean, just to say that you've had a presidential candidate on your show, whether he wins or not, doesn't matter. But just having a presidential candidate. Yeah, he's a very cool guy. And he's so down to earth, you know, he's just so relaxed, and he's a normal guy who's a smart business guy. So that was really interesting.
Yes.
David Schwartz from Litecoin was on. And, you know, you build things up in your head about, well, what's Litecoin to be like? Because it's one of the biggest projects. And they're such a nice team. The Litecoin Foundation and the people there are such a great group of people. They're really interesting to talk to. And then I've got this other segment on our show that's called Women in Blockchain. And we interviewed Mary Camacho from Holochain. And it's like, wow, it's like the episode title. It's like, I want to work for Mary Camacho. And it's like, how could you not remember the title of the episode when you know how amazing she is as a person? She's full of energy, enthusiasm. She's got this spark of ideas. She's really into technology. She's inspiring. And so, you know, I've had a really weird, interesting mix of people, but I can't single out and say I've had one episode that was a best episode ever, because we have a lot of fun.
So many,
and there's lots of episodes I could point back to where even it was just Yuri and me having a conversation, and it just completely went off trail. And we were one time doing an episode. It's funny because we're talking about EOS, but there was one episode where we actually were doing a chart analysis of EOS, and I did it live, but I also provided the link to a YouTube influencers group that I belong to. And to be honest, I didn't think anyone would show up. And Crypto Crow turned up. And Crypto Crow, if you don't know who he is, has about 60 or 70,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I've gotten to know him, and he's become a friend, but I didn't expect him to turn up on the show. And that was really fun. And it went from, we're talking about EOS and the charts and where we think EOS could go. And suddenly we were talking about, I mean, it was a slippery slope, and the whole entire show just went completely into the wrong direction of things we shouldn't talk about.
You weren't sued, were you, I hope?
No, we were just having a bit of fun. It was all just a bit of a laugh.
So just to ask, because since you are on the EOS Dublin podcast, the Ignition podcast, just you have some impressions of EOS, not all of it favorable, which has to be fair to be said. What are the things that you're hearing? Because you're outside the community. So what are the things that you're hearing outside the community?
So, I mean, the thing that's really interesting is that, you know, I have invested in and out of EOS several times because I really like the way the coin trades as a technical play. Fundamentally, so that this is how I analyze coins. There's the fundamentals and technicals. The fundamentals for me are always 50-50. And the reason being is because there's a lot of people out there who write articles that aren't always favorable. There's questions around, for example, how come several of the, you know, more senior management have left the group of the company after raising $4 billion. There are questions that come up about, you know, the number of bug fixes that are going on that kind of become more public. Now, that could just be public criticism, or it could be legitimate. I don't know, because I haven't gotten close enough to the project to look at it. There have been questions recently about some scammy activity that was going on between EOS and Huobi, where somebody from Huobi actually listed or released a spreadsheet showing the transactional information that was going on between EOS and Huobi, which was concerning. And of course, then there's this other discussion that goes on about this idea of, you know, we're supposed to have consensus where there's many, many participants who can vote. But in the EOS community, there's actually a very few number of people who have a lot of coins, and a lot of people call it a cartel. Mm-hmm. So me as let's say someone who's an observer or a host of many, many coins and projects, take an interest in wanting to understand more about what's going on. So I try not to form opinions myself, because my job as a host is to investigate and find out, interview people and get to the truth and satisfy my own user community. And of course, I have my own curiosity as to what the truth is behind all of this. And it does, of course, leave some, you know, form of a negative sentiment in your mind when you ask, Is there a cartel? Was there some illegal activity with Huobi going on that shouldn't have happened? Why are people leaving? And what is the direction of the project? And are things really stable? Having $4 billion is one thing, but having a true direction and a real, delivering real value is another. So I don't question that there's probably good intentions, because I know you and I know you're a good person, but I don't know the EOS, the positive in place, which concerns me because we want projects to be seen in a positive light.
Okay, and I'm hoping we have been talking to introduce you to some EOS people to address those questions directly too.
Oh, so for sure. Yeah. I mean,
cool. So you can gather, from the horse's mouth, you can put those questions directly.
That would be great. Yeah. I mean, the whole point of these types of podcasts and being on each other's shows is so that we get everyone out there understanding what the truth is, what's really going on and where we're heading. Yes. Because the end game, as you and I both know, is to get adoption of cryptocurrency, to help the unbanked, to give people access to things and services, education, access to banking services, other things they don't have. Mm-hmm. And certainly for me, that's the main goal. So things like, negativity flying around about projects is a distraction that actually, in all honesty, would probably prevent a lot of people from buying my book, because they would say, yeah, but there's so much negativity about crypto. Why would I want to buy a book about something I'm not interested in?
Yeah, so we all have to work hard, you're right, to talk about things openly and honestly and address issues head on. There's no point hiding them.
That's
so
right.
I'm looking forward to hearing some of your interviews. So my final question for you today, Steve, would be, you've mentioned some really interesting people you've interviewed. If you could interview anybody in the world, anybody, who would it be? Doesn't have to be cryptocurrency. Who would you be your top guest?
I mean, outside of you?
We'll just stop now, shall we?
Well, you were. I think we called you the Queen of Crypto on my show, right?
We did. We had a lot of fun, actually. A lot of fun.
So, I mean, it's an interesting question because there's a number of, let's say, notable people in the crypto community who are obviously people that would be great to have on the show to complement the people we've already had. So people like Roger Ver or CZ from Binance or Charlie Lee from Litecoin are all interesting people because they're very active and very present in the market. But outside of cryptocurrency, I've been jokingly trying to get the author of Game of Thrones onto the show because although he hates to talk about Game of Thrones, I thought it'd be really interesting if we did a kind of a cryptocurrency version of Game of Thrones with them.
Because I saw a very funny joke there. If I can get it right now, it was, I can't, it was, in the world of crypto, you hodl or you die.
Yeah.
It's like in the Game of Thrones, you win.
Well, my Game of Thrones version was if you have the mother of dragons, she could be the breaker of blockchains rather than the breaker of chains.
Yes.
So if she's the breaker of blockchains, then she's like your hacker. And then you have the Lannisters, who are the ones doing the mining. But now, of course, as we probably know, if you watch Game of Thrones, their mining has run out.
Yes.
So the supply has come to an end. So you start to get into some really interesting twists on what else could you do to create a blockchain version of Game of Thrones. And it's all just for fun. But we sometimes think, why not just bring guests who have nothing to do with blockchain onto the show? And he's an interesting character. So we thought, well, why not?
Well, it would be interesting because then you can get their view as an outsider. They must know something about cryptocurrencies. They must have some views, whether they're skewed, positive, biased, or positively hateful, So, and those people are, especially like the author of the Game of Thrones. I mean, I'm a big fan of the series, I have to say. I haven't read the books, but I follow the series. But like, what a brain. What a brain.
Yeah. And of course, the other thing is that now because we've interviewed McAfee, who's a libertarian U.S. presidential candidate. We've interviewed Andrew Yang, who's a Democratic national candidate. We've been trying to find a Republican national candidate in the U.S. who's favorable to blockchain. And the fascinating thing is we haven't found one.
Oh, okay.
So if we could find one Republican candidate,
yes.
Yeah, so if we could find a U.S. candidate running for office for the U.S. presidency, or who's in the government, who's a Republican, who's also blockchain favorable, then of course that would round off our show, having had equal representation of each of the different major parties or points of view, which would be really interesting. But like I said, we haven't found any Republicans who are outspoken about blockchain the same way.
We'll have to go looking for them. Ooh. Yeah. That's so cool. Listen, Steve, thank you so much for your time today. It's fascinating. Loved your stuff. And I love the fact that you went all into crypto. You deserve to be very successful. You are very successful. But, someone with that passion and willingness to jump in, leave your regular job behind. Okay, this is it. This is for me. That is it. We need more people like that, because without the passion, we're not going to get that mass adoption, which we need. Because as somebody said, I forget who it was now, I'm sorry for not remembering the name, but we have to work very hard in this area because we cannot just be complacent, because this is too important a technology and a movement and a way of thinking to let slide and let something worse come in, you know. So I think it's incumbent on us all to get out there and go for it. And you are leading by example. Well done, Steve.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it, Jillian. And thank you for having me on the show. And thank you, everyone, for listening in. I really appreciate it.
Brilliant. We're listening to Steve Good, who is the host of coinchat.net. Go and listen to us.